Different's great, but being different for the sake of being different, I'm not a big fan of, right? If you just want to be different for the sake
technology
of it. But
increased, I would hide behind it.
And you start to hear some of their challenges, and yes.
Because it speaks to the core of who you are and what drives you forward. Because what makes you different is what drives you. Welcome, everybody, to the Master Connector Show. I'm your co-host, Rob Genovesi, and actually I'm going solo today. My co-host, Steve Spiro. A lot of you know, if you're a fan of the show, he's on a well-deserved getaway to Bali, which I don't even know where that is on the map, but it sounds pretty amazing. So you got me today going solo with our guest, but listen, I hope you're tuning in every single week. We go live Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern time, every week on LinkedIn, bringing you amazing guests. And today is no different. But look, if you want to know more about what we're doing, about who the people we're bringing on, because look, everybody's got a journey. Everybody's got gaps in their knowledge that need to fill. And this is the way I looked at it coming up through business, through networking, through relationship building, is I knew that I knew some stuff, but there was some things I didn't know. And those gaps are what we need to fill in order to further our self-improvement journey, which self-improvement has kind of gotten a bad stigma over the years. The fact is we need to level up. We need to level up our game. We need to get better. We need to fill the gaps so we can be the best person we can be in order to achieve our goals in life. And so we want to bring guests for you. We're going to share their stories, their skill sets, their experience, and help you fill in those gaps so you can further your opportunity, so you can build the business you want to build, the career you want to build. Network with people that will help you get there, because we all need people, and hit those goals that you want to hit. If you want to learn more about what's coming up, go to masterconnector.show, and you can see all the guests that we have upcoming in future episodes. If you can't tune in every single week, we hope you can. But if you can't, you can look down that list and see who's coming up in the future. Bookmark your calendar. If there's somebody in particular that you want to hear from, you can go to masterconnector.show. And also there, if you want to sponsor an episode, you can click the tab under there, sponsor an episode, and we'll highlight your business on a particular episode for that week, with also some social media shout outs to help you get more traction in your business. So if you're in the show and you're here live and not on a replay, look, I want you to comment, like, share. The interaction is big here. We have people who are in the audience connecting with other audience members, because connection is key of what we're doing here. This is the Master Connector Show. And, you know, everybody can be a master connector. It doesn't matter where you are. And speaking of where you are, let us know where you're tuning in from. We've had people tune in from around the world, as well as around the U.S., of course. But let us know, because we always like to know where people are coming in from. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments. If you have a question for me, but hopefully for a guest, because you'll get me every week. But for our guest, if you got something burning, something you need a clarifying. By the way, clarity is what you need in life in order to really make strides. It wasn't until I gained clarity around what I wanted for my life, in my business, what to do to get there. Clarity is key. And if you've got a little confusion in your brain about something, put the question in the comments. Get that question answered. It could be the thing that's been holding you back, and you want to get answers to that. In today's show, you know, very excited to speak with our guest today, shining a light and breaking silence. You know, the Master Connector Show, it's a pretty light show. You know, there's no hardballs, there's no curveballs here. We speak about connecting. We speak about positivity and optimism. We speak about building business and ways that our guests have done that. Today, we're going to get a little bit more serious, maybe a little intense, but talk about something that needs to be talked about. Our guest, Olivia, I'm going to introduce her in a second, but just real quick. I mean, very accomplished person. And in a space, coming out of a space that is in dire need of some resources in the mental health manner. You know, when people talk about their health, we immediately think, how's your lungs? How's your heart? You know, how's your circulation? All this thing. What's your cholesterol level? Was the doctor a week ago? They ask all these things. You know what they just started asking recently, in a couple of years? Questions about my mental state, which, by the way, From my understanding, and I don't know, have a lot of people in my life that are dealing with mental illnesses. I know people who are dealing with various levels of it. One guy in particular who brought me into networking in a big way struggle daily in a very intense way. And, we don't know because sometimes they struggle quietly. So you never know who you're talking to. So when you're talking to somebody, understand they may have a struggle that you're not aware of, and just be cognizant of that and treat people kindness. And sometimes you got to ask people, hey, how you doing today? Because I know a lot of people who struggle only taking it day by day. So let's jump into this. I want to introduce our guests. And if you're ready to go, type in hashtag let's go. And let's get this episode going because we want to hear what she has to say. Olivia Nunn is a U.S. Army veteran who served honorably for 20 years and retired as the Director of Communications in 2021. Olivia brings unmatched expertise in public relations, crisis communication, and media strategy. She's the Chief of Marketing at Veterans of Success Resource Group, owner of Olivia Nunn Communications, Executive Director of the Workplay Obsession All-In Foundation, and VP of Communications for the Pan-Pacific American Leaders and Mentors. Armed with a master's in PR and corporate communications from Georgetown, she's a mission-driven leader helping brands and organizations tell their story with power and precision. Please welcome to the show, Olivia Nunn. What's up, Olivia?
Hi, thank you so much for having me on your show.
Oh, thank you for coming. It's such an honor to have you on here. And as we talked backstage, I've only been with the show for a year and a half. A friend of my, Steve and mine, Cameron, was co-host before that. And I know you weren't before I came on. But so for me, it's the first time. For some of our audience, it may be seeing you again. But look, given all I just read, which I know is scratching the surface, because I know you've achieved a lot of things as I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, looking at your website. Audience, we've got a powerhouse here. So you're going to want to tune in really closely and listen to the conversation that we have with Olivia. So I want to thank you for coming, Olivia. And so we want to start this off. There's a lot of stigma around what we're going to be talking about. And I want to let you really kind of kick it off. I'll ask the question, but you've got a message. And I want you to take it from what you need to get out there in terms of that message to let our audience understand what we're talking about. So audience, one, type in the hashtag end the stigma. And here's my question for you, Olivia. What does it really mean to break the silence around mental health in the military? Because that's what we're talking about.
For me, breaking the silence is, really, it's shining the light, breaking the silence, ending the stigma, and rewriting the narrative on military mental health. And that's the motto that I go by. And for the military, for a very long time, we didn't talk about mental health. We're starting to see a really big shift with that, where we are talking about it. I've got a lot of friends who are mental health advocates, and we're starting to see leaders talk about mental health. You see a lot of companies talk about mental health, which is a big shift, and I'm really excited about that. But as a whole, it isn't the topic of conversation. And I think it's really important that we have this conversation and we talk about it from the perspective that it's normalized. And we don't talk about it because there's so much that goes into it from the perspective of from a negative concept. Like, if I admit that I've got a problem with my mental health, then I am going to be looked at it from this idea that I'm weak, or that I have an issue, or that I can't be part of the solution, or that I can't do my work, or it's going to affect my clearance, or that I can't be part of the team. There's so much that goes into it. So for so long, many military members have just remained silent. But unfortunately, we know that remaining silent impacts you in so many ways. It impacts your health. It impacts, your gut health. It impacts your physical health. And so I think it's really important that we talk about it. And then, unfortunately, we do know if you don't address mental health, for some people, it can lead to suicide.
Yeah. And, I haven't had personally interactions with anybody in the military. And again, this is part of my ignorance. Like you're saying, it needs to be talked about. The reason I don't think I have is because it's not really talked about. And I have a very good friend of mine. He brought me into networking. He changed my life with a single conversation, and I didn't know this at the time, Olivia, but he was out at a networking event one night, and he had very open about his struggle with depression, deep depression, clinical, that kept him out of work for 2 years, and he has a family. And the night I met him, he just made a simple conversation, introduced himself, and invited me to network with some of the people he's networking with in business. And I didn't find out till later that he overcomes day by day. But I thought he made such a profound impact in my life. I thought, what if that was the day he decided he didn't want to go out, that he couldn't go out, or worse? So being able to understand that and being open has made me more sensitive to the person I may be talking to. So what would you say to our audience members when they're interacting with people and they don't know what's going on there, and it could be mental health?
I think you said it in your intro, right? Be kind. And I think that's just be kind in general. And I don't think it's just about mental health. I think we should be kind to people. We have no idea what goes on in people's lives. Like, you have no idea what's impacting an individual's life. You have no idea that it was their worst day, because they've lost somebody, or maybe it's their last paycheck, or they were delivered some bad news, or, they failed to do something. I mean, we just simply don't know. And I think compassion and having a little bit of empathy towards people can go such a long way. And I think, I'm victim to, I wouldn't say victim, but I think, I am just as bad at this as you, that sometimes we get so wrapped up in our own life, at our own busyness, that sometimes we forget to take a step back and say, my life isn't your life. And we need to be able to hold our life just for a moment and just look at the individual and say, hey, I see that you're just maybe not here in this moment, or maybe you just don't seem as happy. Is there something that I can help you with? Is there something that you need? Or maybe is it just some space? But just be kind, right? And I think that if we just practice kindness a little bit more, I think that would just be so much more helpful.
Yeah, for sure. And and sometimes I know one of the struggles is speaking up. I mean, clearly the people I know that struggled kept it as a secret. But what we're talking about is, especially in the military, is the fact that it's taboo, right? I think at least from an outsider, from a civilian, my perception of militaries, they're strong, they're stoic, you push down anything that's weak. This is my perception, and I'm throwing my ignorance in the ring here. But audience, type in hashtag brave voices. So why is it such taboo to talk about it in the military?
I mean, I think you kind of said some of it, right? It is the myth, the expectation that we are these incredibly brave individuals, that we are like Superman or Wonder Woman, that nothing affects us, that we can just keep going. That mission comes first, and that we can carry this incredible load of not just the mission and not just the physical load, but like the mental load that goes with it, and that nothing breaks us.
Mm.
And I think there's this expectation that we're supposed to. And the other part is the expectation of never letting our team down, because we're not an I, we're a we, right? We're part of a team. I think that's the bigger part of it, is if I accept that I am hurting, or that I can't perform, or that I accept that I am no longer able to achieve because I have mental health, or fill in the blank, because I can't do my job, then I'm letting my team down. I can't be there for my fellow brother or my fellow sisters in arms. And so therefore I am a hindrance instead of, part of. And so it's easier just to grin it and bear it and just not talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, sometimes you feel like you just got to suck it up, right, for the sake of the team. So I can see the conflict there. I want to get to some of our audience here. It's a very interactive show. We love having our audience members here. I just want to acknowledge a couple of them. We have Yolanda Chin. Yolanda does not miss an episode. So appreciate Yolanda tuning in from Texas. And look at this, we have Samuel coming in from Nairobi, Kenya. So all around the world. LinkedIn user here. We're not sure who you are because you're not, registered, but powerful team, couldn't be more timely. In healthcare tech, we're feeling the same momentum. And she goes on to talk about it. So, the fact that we are talking about it is step one, but I want to get into the next question I have and type in hashtag resource crisis, because I think this is the second part of that, because, we all hear we have to create awareness. And awareness is all great. And you can go, I'm aware, but that doesn't get the job done. So when we talk about the gaps in resources, hashtag resource crisis, audience, type that in there. Olivia, what are the gaps in the resources available to provide solutions?
So I think it's just simply there's just not enough. And I've said this before. And that's everything from what I say is the emergency, right? I think a lot of people just like to say, well, if you are in a crisis, just dial 988 and hit option 1. And not to say that's not a great resource, and absolutely that should be a great resource, and continually utilize that. But there's got to be more than just 988 option 1. There has to be an ability where service members, veterans, and their spouses have the ability to reach out, whether that's a phone call or text or physically extend a hand and say, I am hurting. I am literally in the position of wanting to end my life. And I don't know what to do. So that's one end. And then the other end is I may not be in that crisis point yet, but I'm quickly getting there. So how do I back off from that cliff or that point? What resources are available to me to be able to navigate the crisis that I feel like that I'm swimming in, the way that I'm feeling, the way that the situation that I'm living in, right? And it's got to be more than just medication. While medication, I believe, can work for some people, I don't think that's the end all be all for everyone. And I hate the fact that that's what seems like to be the first solution is let's just medicate. Well, I don't think that that's necessarily what we should be doing. I think what we should be doing is looking at all of the available options that are on the table, all types of therapies, all types of modalities, because what could work for me may not work for you and vice versa. And also, we've got to look at it from a financial perspective. Modalities, some are inexpensive, and quite frankly, majority of them are quite expensive. That's just the truth. It takes money in order to provide these resources and therapies to our veterans and their spouses. And one, because it's just scarcity. And then two, people need to be paid. Like no one's going to work for free. They've got their own bills and roofs over their head that they need to take care of. And that is the issue, is how do we get more resources, whether that's medication, therapies, and, list the modalities that are available and make them accessible and remove the red tape to those modalities. Let's not put your personal feelings based on towards those modalities that you have and just make them accessible. I think that's the issue. There's so many people that have an opinion. Well, I don't like that particular modality because it doesn't have this type of research. Well, there's been plenty of modalities that have been out there or that are out there that have plenty of research, but because of bureaucracy and policy, they're not readily available. But we know that those treatments work. So that's the issue. Resources one, are just not readily available, the cost to those resources, and then just getting them to our veterans in a timely perspective, right? If they're literally at that crisis point or getting near that crisis point, that's what we've got to do.
So that's where I want to jump in for a second, because a lot of what I hear you saying, and I know this is not exclusively what you're saying, but what I'm hearing you saying, and I want to dig in a little deeper on, is the person who is having mental health challenges has to do something. And what comes along with mental health challenges is not wanting to do something for whatever reason, right? From what I understand, whether it's the stoicism of, trying to deal with it on your own, not wanting to be able to bring people into it because we feel like we're letting them down, whatever the reason may be. So the question then I have is, outside of the individual themselves having to seek out help, what can a civilian do, or a friend, if they sense something's off? How can they do something, and what can they do to help that person maybe bridge the gap to getting some help?
So believe it or not, your advocacy by simply making a call, right? Um, Oftentimes we sit there and say, well, I don't know how to make a difference. You can absolutely make a difference in the most simplest way. Pick up the phone, or better yet, go over to their house. Um, People that hurt and hurt often will not ask for help. And I say this a lot. Smiles hide a lot. And just because you see people's lives on social media, and a lot of people do not share their lives on social media. They're not as outwardly on social media, but that doesn't mean that they're not hurting. And just because they do, on the flip side, if they do share their life a lot on social media and you see all these happy pictures, that doesn't mean that that's their life either. Those are just snapshots in time. Pick up the phone. Better yet, go over there and just straight up ask them, how are you? Like, seriously, how are you? I don't need anything from you. I just came over to check on you, just to spend some time. What do you need? Is it time? Is it a hug? Can I get you somewhere? And then the other part is your money. All right. And this is the other pushback I'll get. Well, I don't have a lot of money. Look, if you, your friend, if every single person gave $5, right? And you have that Starbucks, that one latte that you always get, you could give up one. Or maybe that one round of beer that you always get with your buddy, you can give up one. And if you did that every single month, and your group of 10 friends, if you and all your buddies every single month did it one time, right? And then their friends, see, you get the math, right? If you all kept doing that every single month, those dollars add up. And you gave it towards an organization that did something with it. And there's plenty of military nonprofits that do absolutely make an impact within their community, both locally and nationally. There's 55,000 military nonprofits that do something within the community. Give to them. And then the other thing that you can do is become an advocate. Help make policy changes. Write to your congressional members. And so when those conversations come up, when it's time to vote, study them. Be part of the conversation. Don't be blind to them. Help push those changes. Don't be ignorant to those conversations because you're like, well, I'm not a veteran. I don't know a veteran. So therefore, I don't want to know or care to study. It absolutely is part of your community. Veterans are in your community, right? Service members come from all zip codes across the United States. We voluntarily raise our right hand to serve and defend this nation. And then we go back to those zip codes when we're done. We are in your communities, whether you know it or not. So that's how you can be part of the solution.
I thank you for outlining that, Olivia. And I just want to express a couple of things as objective as I can be to our audience. And that's the last thing you said was they're everywhere. And the thing that I've come to understand about those who served, which, personally, and as far as the show is concerned, Steve and I both respect the military very highly. We value our freedom, and we know that comes from our military who risk their lives and not just their lives, but their families' lives as well, because there's a lot of impact in the families' lives for those who serve. So we highly respect you as a military veteran and all you do for them. So they are everywhere and they're very humble. They don't talk about it necessarily. I mean, my dad served, he didn't see action, but my dad never talked about it. I didn't know it only because he had a Foot Locker in the basement. I said, "Hey, what's this?" as a little kid. And even people I meet, I go, "Wait a minute, you're in the military?" They go, "Yeah." You don't know it. So therefore you don't know, audience, who you're interacting with and what they're battling. The other thing you said, Olivia, that I want to highlight to the audience is the takeaways, the things you can do. Anything from, "Hey, how are you?" face to face, a phone call, "Hey, how are you doing? Or is everything okay? I just noticed you a little off. Is everything okay?" A drop by to the house. We are so busy in our lives that if you drop by, man, does it not mean everything to a person that you took your time to drop by and say, "Hey, what's going on? Everything cool?" I know when people have done that with me, they said, "Hey, I just wanted to call. Something seemed a little off. Are you okay?" And I appreciated that. And then the other thing too is, hey, you don't have time, you got money, right? Because usually some people don't have either, and I've had those days. But you got a little bit of money. What's $25 a month on a regular basis to you? It's not going to impact your household at all. Give, right? And be an advocate. That takes a little bit more time, takes more energy, but certainly if you're inclined to. And I think a big part of this, Olivia, is knowing somebody in that situation helps you get more, not just aware, but more involved in it, so that you can help, because now you're connected, right? So is that personal connection that motivates you. So I want to kind of end up on one of the last things before we wrap up the show. And I know we talked about this. We talked about solutions and such, but the awareness part, which we just hear, what can we do on a daily basis? Because I'm sure there's some people like, "Oh, no, I don't know anybody like that," but they're everywhere. So what are some of the things we can maybe start to listen for that might make us go, and say, "Is everything okay?" Or get to understand a person's situation? Maybe some telltale signs. Is there anything?
So many of us have like think of your friendships like in circles, right? You've got a circle of friends that you pretty much hang with and know, and you call or text pretty much every day. And then your circle kind of grows from there, and you kind of know them little less as that circle expands. But for the most part, you kind of know within each one of those bands of circles how people kind of react and how they act and how they kind of behave. And so when you kind of notice the little things that are a little different, like maybe online, right? Someone reached out to me actually this week. She had noticed that the way my tone and how I normally post online was a little off. And so she messaged me. She's like, "Hey, I just want to check in on you. I noticed that your tone was a little off. And I just want to make sure, are you okay?" I was like, "Actually, I'm not. Thank you so much for checking in on me." And we had, a message that went back and forth for a few minutes. So that's just, just it was very subtle. But she keyed in on that. And, I've actually known her for a few years, but that was just something subtle. We don't live anywhere near each other. She's on a different part of the US, but just a small little sign. Right. And so those, I think, are the things that you should be keying in on. Right. Or maybe you do see this person all the time, and maybe, the way that they show up physically, are they somebody who's bubbly and always just kind of like high energy, and maybe they don't show up like that. Um, you know, it doesn't hurt to ask, "Hey, are you truly okay? You seem a little off." And I think that's the issue with people, is that we're so afraid to ask, like we're going to offend you, or it's taboo to ask you, "Are you okay?" And then here's the other part: it's okay to not be okay. And I think we need to be okay in both of those situations. One, let's ask. If you feel like your friends or the people around you are a little off, it's okay to ask, just to make sure that they're all right. And then the second part is, let's be honest with ourselves to say that we're not okay. And sometimes there's no answer to that, but let's just be honest and sit with that honesty of saying, you know what? Yes, I am okay. Thanks for asking. And then, or it's, I am not okay. And I don't know why, or maybe I do know why, but I'm honestly not okay. And I'm not going to keep hiding and keep smiling just to fake it.
Yeah. And, a big part of that, and I have to keep things simple because I'm not that bright. And, it's just about being human. And I will leave the audience with this before we say goodbye and wrap up, is that, I know that there are times when I feel a little nudge inside me. And anytime I've ignored that nudge, something didn't happen that was supposed to, or I would recognize a negative impact in my life because I didn't do something, whether it was impacting me or somebody that I knew. And anytime I paid attention to that nudge and said, you know what, let me just make that phone call. It's like you said, wow, good timing. How many times have you ever heard that from somebody? You're like, yeah, I just thought I would call. Well, look, that's not nothing. That's God's way of going, hey, somebody needs help. So he puts it inside you and you reach out to somebody and they're like, good timing. Yeah, actually, can we talk? So I would say, audience, if you get a nudge like that and it's the tiniest little thing, don't ignore it. Listen to it and do what it's nudging you to do, because you don't know the impact you can make in somebody's life just by simply reaching out, like Olivia said. So Olivia, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. The half hour goes so fast, but if you would just tell the audience how they could reach out to you, maybe connect with you, or anything you want to talk about to promote.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate the time to be able to share on your show. I do love the conversation. I could talk about it for hours, but I am on LinkedIn. You can find me there. I'm also on Instagram as _Olivia Nunn. I'm also on Facebook. I have my own website. It's www.olivianunn.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Olivia. Really appreciate you. I'm going to put you in the green room. If you have a couple minutes to hang out, I'll join you after we wrap up. But thank you again. Appreciate it. So listen, audience, that's it goes so fast when we talk about important and valuable information. And I hope you got value out of this. And if you did, make sure you're joining us every week, and especially next week, May 14th, as we do episode number 211, Leaning into Awkward with Laura Thorne. That's really interesting. I can't wait to speak with Laura about that, because a lot of us feel awkward in so many situations. And she's saying if you lean into it, some good things happen. And, as always, go to masterconnector.show to see what we got coming up. And, if you want to sponsor the show, absolutely, you can get there and do that. And just want to talk about a quick story here. I'm going to read this off because this could be important. After years of battling PTSD in silence following her service as a Marine, Kirsty Ennis chose to share her mental health journey publicly, breaking the stigma and inspiring thousands of veterans to seek help. She went on to summit mountains on every continent with a prosthetic leg, using her platform to advocate for wounded warriors and mental health awareness. Her courage to speak out turned her pain into purpose, proving that vulnerability is a superpower and that real healing begins when we stop hiding. And, that was Olivia's message today. Big message. Let's just be human with one another. Let's have compassion. Let's have patience and try and help and understand what people are going through, and always reach out. This is the Master Connector Show. Connect with other people. It's all about the connection, because when you connect with other people in a very real, transparent, and authentic way, wonderful things happen. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Please join us next week. Have a great week.
And you start to hear some of their challenges, and yes,
because it speaks to the core of who you are and what drives you forward. Because what makes you different is what drives